Alright guys, welcome back to Underground Science, and in this video we'll be talking about the electron transport chain part 3. So in the previous two videos we've talked about complex 1 and complex 2. Alright, complex 1, otherwise known as NADH dehydrogenase coenzyme Q oxidoreductase, complex 2, succinate dehydrogenase coenzyme Q oxidoreductase, and now we'll talk about coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxidoreductase, or also known as complex 3. Alright, so just because it's getting too crowded, I made another one right here. So if we want, we can just still stay parallel and draw complex 3 right here. Alright, so let's just go and draw it out. So again, this is our cristae. This is our cristae, our inner mitochondrial membrane where the electron transport chain occurs. And let's go and draw out complex 3. So let's just go and say complex 3 looks somewhat like that. Probably doesn't, obviously, right? And first what we do, right, is we identify the name, right? So the name for this is going to be complex 3 or coenzyme Q, cytochrome C oxioreductase. Alright, so oxioreductase, also known as, so we can also divide this and say coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxioreductase is also known as complex 3. Alright, so what happens in complex 3? Well, remember that, so we'll keep on scrolling up and down in this video because we have our complex 2 picture right here. So what happens in complex 2 is that we eventually transfer our 2 electrons that got reduced, right? Because of FADH2 going to FAD, got oxidized. So then we reduce the crap out of the iron sulfur clusters, and the iron sulfur clusters transferred their 2 electrons onto coenzyme Q. Same thing happened in complex 1, right? We transferred our 2 electrons to coenzyme Q. Now, coenzyme Q is not made of protein, so let's go and say that. Not made of protein. Not made up of, I should say, not made up of protein. All right, and it's mobile, so it's going to actually go along here, and it's going to find complex 3. All right, remember our coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxioreductase that we said down there. And so it's going to find cytochrome, or it's going to find complex 3. So let's say complex 3 is right here. We'll draw it small here, and we'll actually look at it into detail down there in this picture. But what happens here is that coenzyme Q is going to transfer its electrons, right, to complex 3. So it's going to take these electrons, transfer it over, and in this complex, we're going to see we have a cytochrome B unit inside this complex 3, and we're going to have a bunch of iron on there. All right, so let's go and look at this. So inside here, it turns out we have this cytochrome. Actually, it's not a good color. Let's go and choose a different color. So it turns out we have this, let's choose green. All right, so we have this cytochrome B complex. All right, so a cytochrome B complex. And on the cytochrome B complex, it turns out that we have a lot of, nope, not a good color again. Dang it, sorry guys. Turns out it's going to have a lot of iron groups, all right? So it's going to have a lot of iron groups on it, and it's 3+ oxidation state. All right, so it's going to have a lot of iron groups on it. Nope, not F3, it's going to be Fe3, right? All right, so let me go and fix this real quick. All right, so these iron groups are then going to receive these electrons from coenzyme Q. You know, I'll just draw it here. So it's going to receive these electrons. Remember, coenzyme Q is right here, and it's going to be mobile. So it's going to send those electrons down to complex 3, right? As it sends those electrons, we're going to see these iron groups, right, this 3+ oxidation iron groups get reduced to Fe2+, right? It's going to get reduced to Fe2+. So all of these will start getting reduced. But eventually what's going to happen is that we'll see cytochrome C, there's a cytochrome C unit also later that we'll talk about in another video right here, right? There's going to be a cytochrome C unit right here next, right? That's going to actually pick those electrons back up from the reduced form of iron, which is Fe2 plus in this case, and that will cause the 2 plus iron to go back to the 3 plus iron. So for now, we can just say that the electrons will then transfer here, and then the iron will then go back. It's kind of like a cycle. Will then go back to the 3 plus state. That's going to happen to all these iron groups on the coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxyreductase complex. And just a note here, so let's just say for a future video, we'll talk about the rest of the reactions, but this is cytochrome C. And something special about cytochrome C is that it can only take and transfer one electron at a time. All right, so it can only take and transfer one electron at a time. So all these electrons coming to it, cytochrome C, I'm like, bro, chill, right? I'm trying to only take one electron because that's what I can do. I can't take more than one electron at a time, right? So the electron, he's going to take one electron at a time, and it's actually going to transfer to complex 4, and then we'll talk about that in the next video. All right, so let's just do a quick review of what happened in complex 3, or a coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxyreductase. Is that we have a a cytochrome B complex here, and the cytochrome B complex has a lot of iron groups on it with the 3 plus oxidation state. And our coenzyme Q, right, our ubiquinone right here, coenzyme Q, has its electrons previously from our NADH dehydrogenase coenzyme Q oxyreductase and our succinate dehydrogenase coenzyme Q oxyreductase, right? Complex 1 and 2, right here. See, it got reduced. Coenzyme Q has those electrons. And so what it's going to do is that coenzyme Q is it's going to drop those electrons off to these many iron groups in its 3 plus oxidation state attached to cytochrome B in our coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxyreductase complex. And what's going to happen is that these iron groups are then going to get reduced, right? And it's going to turn into Fe2 plus, then it's going to turn back into Fe3 plus because it's going to give its electrons to cytochrome C one at a time. And so its oxidation state is going to go back to 3 plus because it loses a negative charge. And this is happening as a cycle in all these iron groups that are attached to cytochrome B in our coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxyreductase complex 3, part of our electron transport chain. The next videos, in the future video, we'll talk about what happens after cytochrome C receives these electrons, and then what happens as it transfers one electron at a time to our cytochrome oxidase, which is also called complex 4. All right, and so that's it for this video. Hopefully I see you guys in my future videos. We'll talk about more cool topics about biochem, physics, and chem. Hope you guys hit that notification bell, like, and subscribe, and see you guys later, and stay safe.